Check, check, check. That's nice. I had my microphone off this entire time. Thanks for pointing that out. That would have been a crappy stream otherwise. Thanks, Danny. Or Donnie. Much appreciated. At least you guys can hear me now. I guess I was talking to myself this entire time. Anyways, welcome to the stream. Today I'm sculpting this Gilman from the great movie Monster Squad. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But I'm sculpting it because my class that I teach is sculpting their own characters as well. So I wanted to kind of do something to work alongside them. Glad to hear. There we go. No, there definitely is sound. It's nice to be able to at least talk a little bit while you work. Plus, I want to be able to interact with you guys as I sculpt. So that would have sucked. Thank you again for pointing that out. Lifesaver. Also, if I sound a little funny today, it's because I am a little bit under the weather. I think I have a nasty cold coming my way. I was a little sick last week, so I sound a little bit congested. That's probably why. Thanks, man. Yes, I did. We actually started from scratch entirely. We made the whole body out of Z-spheres. And I taught the class to model heads, basically starting from basic geometry in ZBrush. So we started with a sphere and a cube for the jaw, and they kind of manipulate it to get what they have now. Most people in my class are, I guess, opting for human characters, which you can sculpt anything. I love creatures. I highly encourage them to do creature stuff. It's just more fun, and you learn a lot. But for some reason they all kind of stuck with humanoid characters. So maybe I need to push them harder. Maybe I'll make creatures mandatory next time. But yeah, I prefer starting from scratch. I definitely have bases and stuff when I do client work to, work a little bit more quickly. So if I need to knock out a portrait or whatever, I'll have maybe like an older save of a roughed out basic human face, but I felt it was really important for them to learn how to sculpt stuff from scratch. So I've been sculpting for, I'd say, 10 years now. So I started sculpting for the college program I was in, which was an animation program, and yeah, I've kind of been doing it ever since. So I think the first version of ZBrush I worked with was 2.5, I think. So way back in the days, it was a different program altogether back then. It's definitely a lot better. Do you guys sculpt? Be cool to have some fellow sculptors on here, so. But yeah, I love ZBrush. Especially what they did with 4.8. It's very nice to actually have a real transform gizmo. For those of you that have been working with it before 4.8 know what I'm talking about. That transpose lattice was interesting, to say the least. So maybe I'll just sketch out this fin real quick and do some body work. Just to kind of switch things up. And I also think it's important to kind of, spread your attention along the entire mesh. Can't believe it's already been 10 years that I've been doing this, actually. I feel old now. Feels a lot shorter in my mind. So maybe I'll just kind of start etching out. Oh, you don't know? Yeah, it is super relaxing. It's weird when you first start doing it because you know, you're not used to a lot of the stuff that goes into sculpting. But yeah, once you grow a little bit more confident in your own abilities, it's definitely one of the more relaxing things you can do. Thanks, Denny. Take it easy. Hopefully I'll catch you next time. And again, thank you for pointing out my mic wasn't on. Yeah, sculpting definitely is one of the more relaxing things to do, I find personally. It's a lot of fun, especially if you put on some music. It's a shame that YouTube is so anal about, you know, streaming music in the background. I know there's like copyright-free music and stuff, but I definitely prefer sculpting with music on. It's a very cathartic experience. But if you haven't started sculpting yet and you're into it, definitely check out this program. Zbrush is great. It's not super accessible, but you'll get the hang of it. You really just got to kind of stay at it and push yourself to learn more and more. But that's true for anything really, I guess. If you wanted to learn how to draw, same thing. So I'm thinking of doing more monster sculpts. Maybe like once a week I'll let you guys kind of maybe pick what you want me to sculpt and do it from scratch so you guys can kind of see the process. I just got to think of a way to maybe set up like a voting system, like a poll. So maybe I'll ask you guys if you have any suggestions on characters you'd like to see sculpted, actually, to just post them in the comments of this video, or in the chat if you're here live. That'd be kind of cool. And if you'll excuse me for 1 second, I'm just going to run to the bathroom, and I'll be right back and do some stuff on the body. And I'm back. All right, let's change things up and do some body work. Actually, let me just tweak that jawbone before I move on, because that's bugging me. Just want to make sure I fix that tooth. So it looks like this guy actually sits a little bit lower. And that guy does as well. There you go. So I'll just move the teeth in place. Kind of like that. Let's do the same for these corner ones. Look pretty good. Okay. So the body. Let me actually pull up some reference so you guys can see. I'll just plop it over to my main screen if you give me a second. So Gilman, from the movie Monster Squad, is based off the creature from the Black Lagoon. So, as you can see, he has a lot of reptilian features. This is a great reference, by the way. The original character was designed by Stan Winston Studios, so I'm using that as a reference. But a crap ton of scale details, so I'm going to try and carve those in. But yeah, before you do any of that, obviously it's important you capture the anatomy as much as possible. You know, it's not just scales. Scales on top of muscular areas. So, kind of start with the pecs. It's interesting. It almost looks like a superhero suit the way it's sculpted. It's very different. But yeah, I'll start with the pecs. And just go in using my favorite brush, which is the clay buildup brush. I kind of already started highlighting the areas, but I'll go in and maybe just give it a quick second pass. I'm really not worried about keeping things clean at this point. I just want to make sure it reads well from a distance. So I'll just kind of fill that in. And make sure to Dynamesh every once in a while. Dynamesh is weird. It's a ZBrush term, but basically it will redistribute your surface polygons in a way that matches what you just sculpted. And it sounds like my fiance just came home. Maybe she can come say hi to you guys in chat. Hi, hon. Let's see. You can see like a little bit goes a long way. Rosie, go to your mama. Rosie's our dog, by the way. She'll make an appearance on camera every once in a while. She's adorable. She's a little Pekingese. We rescued her 5 years ago. She's a piece of work, for sure. Rosie, go to mama. So again, just like with the head, I just want to make sure I capture all the larger structures first before I move on. There's an interesting piece here right next to the pec that I'll try and capture. It's almost just like a thin slither of shielding or like a larger scale. Cool. Now we get through all the fun stuff. So these guys are definitely more prominent in the reference. Kind of like that. And they do have like a second layer right below it. Like that. Let me just mask this off for a second, because right below it there actually is a weird piece of scale like this. Maybe I'll just carve into it. Kind of like that. There we go. If you haven't seen Monster Squad yet, yeah, definitely recommend checking it out. Great movie, but yeah, obviously very much based off the creature from the Black Lagoon. It's cool though. The movie's about a bunch of kids that essentially are fighting against the universal monsters. The plot line is crazy, but it's weird. It's almost like Goonies meets Scooby-Doo in a good way. But definitely one of the quintessential 80s flicks, I'd say. Wrong brush. I'll kind of start doing the scales on the side of his torso here. They link up interestingly. They kind of overlap each other and they're more triangular in shape, but they all kind of veer towards these pecs. So it's interesting how these scales kind of mimic musculature. So one, maybe this next one kind of sits on it like this at an angle. Dynamesh. And I'll carve back into the edges of these later on to kind of sharpen them up, but for now I just want to make sure that the volume is actually there, that I have enough geometry to make it look believable. It's looking pretty cool. I'll work my way to the layer below it, so that pattern kind of, actually, let me come in at more of an angle. Maybe like that. So that pattern wraps all the way around the torso. And it's literally just triangles. Cool. It's tedious work, but fun work. Cool, so maybe I'll just come in using a damp standard brush and just kind of smooth these out a little bit and accentuate them slightly. Just kind of carve next to them to make it look like they're actually stacked a little bit more. That looks better. Nice. And I'll add a little bit of a ridge to these guys, so it looks like they're coming off the surface a little bit more. Yep, I actually have done quite a bit of 3D printing. Maybe on a day when I'm not feeling so sick, I'll turn on the cam and show some of the stuff that I 3D printed before, but I've also done work for collectible companies where I've 3D modeled characters for 3D prints that they then turned into statues or busts or figurines. And at our school we also have our own 3D printer, which is nice, so every once in a while I can just, you know, for fun, print out whatever it is I'm working on. But yeah, ZBrush lends itself well for 3D prints. It also has built in, if you look over here, a 3D print export and import hub, and that really allows you to just generate 3D print files very quickly, so it's super 3D print friendly, and it is commonly used, I guess, for toy manufacturing and a bunch of other stuff, so it's not just a program that's used to create game characters and film characters. A lot of people use it. I think I've even seen it used to generate 3D jewelry, which is kind of cool. 3D printing definitely is awesome. I just wish it was a little bit cheaper. It's definitely not as affordable as it can be yet, but it's getting there. Let me just kind of trace this ridge. And smooth it a little bit. Looks nice. And he has a bunch of like scratches across these plates. Kind of just break up that surface. Mm-hmm. A lot of work. Hope my students like it. Let me actually reshape the bottom of that peck a little bit. Because when you're doing all this carving, more often than not, you kind of lose the original shape. So I just want to clean that up a little bit. So let me just pull that peck forward a smidge. Add some more volume in there. Kind of like that. Looks better. Yep, it's starting to look real mean. Yeah. So, there's two ways to go about it. There's 3D printers that actually will print color, although the fidelity of the color is not too great yet. So more often than not, for 3D prints at least, I'll paint them separate. I've only done one because I'm not the greatest when it comes to acrylic painting. But in terms of ZBrush, you can actually paint on your model directly in here, which is kind of cool. So if you wanted to, let me see, add some color, you fairly easily can. And you can print that as well. But like I said, the quality of color 3D printers is not the best yet. I'm sure that'll change. But as of right now, yeah, leaves much to be desired. At least the regular consumer ones. I'm sure there's, more industrial sized ones that do a better job. But the ones I've worked with, no. Let me actually pull the side of that peck in a little bit more, and then I'll start working on these shoulder areas. It should be a lot of fun. That's a ton of small scales. That looks a little bit better. Cool. I have about 15 or so more minutes before I do have to run out for a little bit. So I'll try to get as much done as possible, but I'll probably be back on later on tonight. So looking at the reference, there's a ton of like smaller scales here that kind of gradually become bigger, so I'll need some more geometry to be able to capture that. So I'm just going to increase the resolution. Let's do 250-ish. See if that makes a big difference. Not so much. So 300 maybe. Better. Let me save. Cool. So let's see. try to kind of lay out where these guys need to sit, and I'll just carve in here. Nice and loose. So the more geometry you add in ZBrush, the less responsive brushes become. So I really tend to stay as low res for as long as possible. You know, kind of like roughing stuff out. It's always preferential to have a lower poly count. So then the next ridge becomes a little bit bigger as these guys go up towards the shoulder. Kind of like that. And over here, they should be fairly big. So again, I'm just kind of roughing out the pattern of where they're going to sit first, and I'll add some actual volume to this afterwards to make it look more believable. So this is kind of sketching out what sits where. So Salmon, do you have any suggestions of maybe a character you'd like to see sculpted in the near future? Game characters, good question. I didn't intend on sculpting one, but I could. I really love Metal Gear Solid, and I eventually wanted to, you know, do like a cool Big Boss sculpt. But if you have any suggestions, be happy to take them into account. Let's see how this reads from a distance. Getting there. Hi, hon. Let me add some of these panels over here. By the way, don't freak out. That sound is our air conditioning unit. It's loud as hell. So he has these really large scales along sort of the ridge of his arm. Is kind of tough to keep these nice and uniform, but you won't see as much of the imperfections once they actually overlap each other. So if I do the next one, I'm willing to bet. Pull that up and out. Kind of smooth it. There we go. Working my way up. also recently, I don't know if you were already subscribed at that point, but I also recently did a Pennywise from Stephen King's It, the old school one. Oh yeah, Bad Ma is a cool character. Yeah, I'd love to sculpt Bad Ma. Maybe I'll do that. I'll post in my next video. I'll probably let you know when I'll do that sculpt session for Bad Ma. Then I'll make sure to do it from scratch so you can kind of see the whole process, which is cool. But more than likely that will be like next week-ish. So if you're around, definitely check it out. And speaking of which, it is noon over here, so I actually have to run out. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys had fun. And Salmon, thank you very much for the company. I look forward to talking to you some more in the near future. And keep your eyes peeled for the Bad Ma sculpt then. Be interesting to do. Thanks again. Take it easy, guys.